For the district community grants?
Combien
occupé?
Number 9.
C'est number 9, operating reserve.
Operating reserve.
Yeah, all right.
So you have in front of you on
I got it.
screen the operating reserve budget. The operating reserve budget is pretty straightforward. The only thing that you see is whether or not we're transferring monies to or from the reserve.
Yeah.
So this year we are expecting a transfer of 799,800 from the surplus account. So that will be a reduction in the operating reserve for the year, and that number is essentially one large transfer for the demolition of the Dominion Textiles building. So that's coming from this reserve into the operating fund, and then the operating fund shifts it to the Industrial Commission. So that's how it works.
Yeah.
So you'll see this mentioned in a number of reports,
Yeah.
and it's just following the money. It's just this basically taking money from one pocket and putting it in another pocket.
Yeah.
The other amount is general unrestricted transfer of 79,800. What that represents is certain projects that we would have budgeted for last year that we didn't do. So as you know, there was a surplus last year. So that surplus, part of the reason why there was a surplus is that the money was budgeted and not spent. So if that project continued into the new year, then our practice is as staff is we take that money from the year in which that it was earned, which is last year. So what happens is we have a cutoff where the money is, there's a surplus at the end of March, that money moves into the reserve, and then in the new year it comes back.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's just moving, it's just doing something in a different year as opposed to it being done in the year that you budgeted.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Clear as mud?
Yeah. No, that's good. No.
It's good?
Really good, yeah.
So if you see the highlighted piece, transfer of surplus, what you'll see down below here is that there's no loss, okay? So we're budgeting a break even. But in fact what we're doing is, the reason why it's break even is we're actually going back into prior year surpluses, okay? So it's another way of showing it, because budgets are generally balanced, they come to zero. I wanted to show that it is coming to zero in essence, but in fact what's happening is we're taking prior year surpluses to balance this reserve. So to give you an example of what that means, I'm just going to show you last year's actuals and last year's budget. So last year's budget is showing in this column here. So what we said was, well, we're going to use $386,000 of our prior year surpluses. We're going to earn $38,000 in interest income, and we're going to spend it in the following fashion, okay? But what in fact happened was quite different, okay? So first of all, we didn't spend any of the money that we said we were going to spend. So part of that was due to the timing of the Domtex project. Instead of it being, so what we anticipated a year ago was it would be 250 in the first year and then maybe 500 in the second year, but it looks like it's all going to happen this year. And in fact, at the end of the day, it might be pushed again, depending on where the timing of when the work can be done. But none of it was spent essentially last year. There was none of it came from the reserve. About $23,000 of it was spent on consulting engineering, but none of it actually came out of the reserve, where we planned to have 250 come in through the reserve. And then the 174, that's the same reason why we had the 79,800. That 174 represented old projects that we brought in money to pay for. And two examples included some major retrofit to baseball parks, as you know, that's happened. And we also had a 60-something thousand amount for 63 for a contribution to family residency construction that actually didn't happen. Okay, so those are two examples that made up the 174. So what you see, in fact, is, so what actually happened was we had a surplus at the end of the year, and we transferred 130, we are going to transfer 130 in, There was interest income more than what we expected. And then we didn't spend any money that last year. So the surplus last year, the increase in the reserve total was almost $174,000. So what we budget here and what happens can be quite significant. If ever there's an amount that is required from the reserve that is over an amount that we have asked you for, we come back. It's been our experience that any differences has been below the amount. So that's all I would say about the reserve. It really is just money in and out. So I think it's conceptually it's a little bit easier to understand when you see it in the context of your operating fund. So this is, this is how we're presenting it, and this ties into the operating budget for the year. So if there are no questions, that would be the end of my explanation for that.
Any questions? All right, we're going to operating budget.
We would need to approve that.
We can
We have to
approve
do
that.
so.
We can approve that now. Yeah.
We have to approve the amount that you're transferring from the operating budget, the 130.
Has that not
Oh,
been
yeah.
approved by motion previously?
Not yet.
Okay.
And then we would have to approve the operating budget, reserve budget.
Okay, I agree. So there's two motions, yeah. There's one for the 130, which is a transfer of profits, I guess, or income from last year,
So
which
we
you've
need a
seen.
motion on that.
Yep, I think it takes a motion to make the transfer, for
Yes,
sure,
yeah.
yes.
So move.
Second.
No questions or? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. So, do you need a motion for the operating reserve?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to
Yes.
approve it in
The
general.
budget, yeah.
Yeah.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you want to go to the operating budget next?
Yes.
Next on the agenda?
And I want to start with the attachment that says 3 pages.
3 pages.
Yes. Okay.
So I can start here, and then Marcia and I will probably go back and forth on this so that you can enjoy the variety of 2 different voices. Okay, so what this is in front of you, this is one that we've done. This has been, I think it's the 3rd year that we present it this way. And what we do here, the purpose is to disclose, the total estimated operational expenditures for Argyle, and to identify mandatory and discretionary expense items. So what does that mean? What it means is we take the operating expenses for the municipality, and we say, okay, let's take out the transfers that go to other funds, and let's just talk about the things that the operating fund typically pays for from year to year. And it's a reflection of where our money is being spent and how much of it is actually in our direct control and how much of it is not. Okay? So if you scroll down this document, what you'll see is the total expenditures before any interfund transfers is 7.38 million, and 2.8 million, essentially, I'm rounding, are due to mandatory expenditures. So these are, that represents almost 40% of your budget. What are mandatory expenditures? Any expenditure that the province is forcing us to pay. So school board appropriation, that's based on calculation uniform assessment. We have no control over that at all. Assessment services, same thing. Corrections expense, same. The only one that I would suggest we have some control over in that group is the RCMP police protection.
Yeah.
We have no control over the cost per police officer, but we do have some control over how many police officers But I would say that that control is very limited because the Department of Justice actually decides if you as a council decided to reduce your policing, they would well, first of all, you'd have to agree with the municipality of Yarmouth had to agree with you because you're a shared detachment, and then you would submit that request to the Department of Justice, and they would do an assessment as to whether or not that the RCMP officers at that shared detachment can actually, you know, if they're reduced, can they meet the obligation of scheduling? Can they meet the obligations? And if the answer is no, then they will not allow that reduction. And we've seen that in, you know, not too far from here, we've seen that request be denied. So we really don't have a lot of control over it because I mean, clearly it's a safety issue, and you can't willy-nilly delete RCMP officers.
I think our officers to population ratio is very good here anyway.
It's one of the best in the province.
Yeah.
And probably one of the reasons is low crime rate.
Yeah.
And the other reason is because it's shared. It's a shared detachment.
Yeah.
Does it go for our municipality, does it go by population? The numbers, the amount of money, I'm not talking officers, I'm talking the amount of money we're paying. Is it assessment or is it population?
It's complicated. Well, the answer is it's mixed, because when we first did the detachment, the first, I think I'm going to say 6 officers perhaps, we paid maybe a third of them, or maybe 35-40%, and the rest was paid for by the municipality of Yarmouth. At some point, that proportion changed, so we pay 50% of some officers and a lower percentage for other officers. So the calculation has its history, but it's not based on uniform assessment. I think it was based on some negotiation at some point in the past. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. And the fee that we pay is something that gets negotiated with the province. We don't have any control over that. We'd like to, obviously we pressure the province to keep our costs down, but that's the limited influence we have. So that's 2.8 million there. So then we put mandatory services. So what this means is you got to do this whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so can you influence the cost of how you deliver these services? Yeah, probably. You could, but you can't not do it. So it's a mandatory service. Garbage collection, fire inspection, property inspection, emergency services, and fire protection. So we explicitly excluded the capital levy on fire, because that's shown separately. That fire protection amount of $339,000 represents what we give out to operate our 9 fire departments, not capital, just operating.
Would you Western Counties Regional Library, I know I'm jumping to the other mandatory, is that something we have to provide then, like police? Is that mandated?
Yeah, the agreement is that we would pay there's a 10% that we have to pay of a budget. Now, I don't think that 54 represents 10% of the budget anymore, but there's an allocation to regional libraries in terms of funding, and so our percentage is 10%.
That's
So
why it's mandatory.
it's forced. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So thanks for the question. So garbage collection, diversion, and then fire protection, I think we've done that. So that we're at 53% if we do an accumulation, if we go all the way down, and then we go on and on. So at the end of so there's others here too. I don't know how much more time you want to spend on this in particular, but 4% on area rates, which are paid for by those that are obtaining that service, not paid by everyone. And then the fire expenses.
That 4% is the area rates. That figure is in the 7.3 million.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's in the expense for sure.
Yeah.
But a recognition, why I showed it separate, is a recognition that the revenue for that, there's only certain people that actually pay for that.
That's right.
Only
Yeah.
those that are on that
Certain
service.
people that benefit from that too, right?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So that's why we show it
Yeah.
separate. Council legislative costs are showing, And then we have
What's the percentage of that?
3%. It's been 3% forever.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
Regional investments on the second page, 9%. That is actually down. When we first started to do this, it was 12%. It's now 9%. There's a variety of reasons why. Some of the regional investments went away, or they were one time. Like the REN, for example, was showing we were actually supporting the operations of the REN before it actually came into existence. So it was showing as a cost, but we were actually getting the money from somewhere else. But anyway, so regional investments, 9%. And then, so for the rest, and then, the rest of it is things that we're in a better position to control. So admin and taxation, that includes IT, office expenses, employee benefits. Like, not all employees are there, but you know, the administration is certainly there. The grants to organizations are showing as 4%. I mean, that's a critical service you provide every year. Community development initiatives, 9%. So that's all over the board. That's recreation, active living. That's your courthouse and archives. That's a lot of different things. Again, there are salaries included in here as well. Senior safety is also included. And enforcement and public works, 3%. So and so the last page shows basically 38% of our budget's outside of our direct control. 15% represents mandated expenses. We may change how we do them, but we must do them. 7% includes fire, water, wastewater, which is covered by area rates, so that's not really impacting residents, most residents. 9% of our budget are regional investments, 4% the rebates and exemptions, which leaves 27%. And so what your 27% is your recreation and your administration, finance, etc., everything else, right? So we consider it, the accounting, the bean counters consider this a pretty good tool because it paints a picture as to where we stand and how much actual influence we have when we say our tax rate is this. You know, what is it that we can actually do with that? And so this shows that breakdown.
Yeah.
So Marcia and I thought it would be a good idea to maybe focus on these numbers as opposed to going into the detail of the operating budget. If that's okay by you, it's a little bit higher, a little bit higher up. And we're happy to go in the detail if you want to later, but for now, we just wanted to highlight certain numbers. And so for us, and I'm going to be, you know, like from our perspective, from staff's perspective, you know, the budget's a big deal, and of course it's a big deal to you also. But for us, it's the most important policy document that you have, right? It is a way for council to make decisions around how they want their communities to be serviced. And so keeping in mind that some of this can't actually, some of the budget can't actually do that. Some of it is tied in or tied up. And so what we wanted to do, Marcia and I, is perhaps talk about some of the areas where that we can influence what that looks like, and maybe dig in a little deeper on those, because those are the ones that you can actually change. That's probably where we should be focusing our time, so to make it maybe a little bit more efficient. Okay. So if that's okay, I'll continue.
Yeah,
All
makes
right.
sense.
So I'm not going to really talk about mandatory expenses, but I will spend just a little bit of time on garbage collection and diversion. So this number increases every year for the most part. There are 3 elements to it, one of which you have very little control over, which is the contract to pick up. Now, excuse me, you have control when you go out to tender, because you ask for a certain service. So the control that you have over that is that you could pick up garbage weekly instead of bi-weekly. You could pick it up, right? So there are other things that you could do inside that contract that would increase or decrease service. But the contract that we are in now is obviously, it's a contract and we respect the contract. And that goes up by 3% a year. And so that represents about half of that number. Just going to the right page here.
I know while I'm talking about garbage pickup, solid waste, in some areas, they pick up, you're allowed to pick up one item. They don't have a special pickup, like twice a year like we have.
Right.
But you're allowed to put one item per week or per pickup,
Right.
anytime, all the time during it. Would that probably wouldn't lower our cost anyway,
Well,
or maybe it's not a good idea.
I don't know that I would be able to answer that question. I
No,
think
I
that the contractor
Yeah.
certainly would
Yeah.
it would be a good question to ask the contractor. I mean, so there's two elements when we do the spring and fall cleanup. There's two elements of the cost. One is the landfill cost, which would not change,
Yeah.
right? Assuming you're gonna throw away exactly the same amount, no
Yeah.
matter when you do it, that cost would remain the same. It would be the additional transportation cost
Yes, yeah.
that you might be able to save money on or not, depending on how it would impact their weekly routes. So it's interesting. It's worth pursuing.
I think the place I'm thinking of, the area that does that, they have a pickup every week, and they do solid waste, or garbage one week, and recyclables and compost the other week. So every week there's a pickup, but not the same, you know. But anyway, we're not gonna change that now.
If you had a couch, and they're picking up your compost cart and your blue bags, I don't know how they do that with the truck they've got. It would be so hard for them to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think if council would be interested in re-examining, that service, I think the best way to do that would be to bring them in and to have staff kind of look at options and then present those options to them and see what it would look like from a price perspective.
They do that in Yarmouth, right? I remember talking at the Waste Park meetings that in Yarmouth they pick up whatever every. I don't know if they do a spring and fall cleanup. I think they can pick it up every week or every 2 weeks. They can put anything on the side, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But they do something different than our in the municipality of Yarmouth. And I don't know just exactly what it is.
Well,
Maybe it's not worth looking into, I don't know.
oh, I would suggest that it is. I mean, it's $300,000 total, and I think some of our residents probably would like an additional service. So there's that aspect too, right? And obviously that would come at a cost. But it's worth looking into. I mean, we certainly can't change it for this budget, but if it's something that council's interested in terms of changing their policy, this is why this conversation's important, right? Because then we can bring that up and perhaps make changes for the future, if not right away. We can certainly look at that.
That would be a contract time. That's the time we could react to it.
No, I think if you had a I mean, if you'd obviously deal with the person that you have the contract with, and they might be willing to look at that. Yeah, and they may have to make adjustments, to your point around the couch. They may have to make adjustments as to when they pick up things, and they may have to alternate, et cetera. So we could, certainly, if that was something that council wanted, we could do an environmental scan of what else other people are doing. Even just to have that information would be
Yeah,
useful.
yeah, Aldrich has a good idea.
Councillor Brook?
Our community next to my community, is that the same carrier? Do they bring the garbage at the same place? Because they're allowed to put anything out, like their big garbage pickup, they're allowed to put anything. They're not, that's what my community's always saying, so how come they can do that and we can't?
Well, I think part of the answer might be because that municipality is not a member of WasteCheck. So there might be rules and regulations that WasteCheck is pushing or imposing as part of our bylaw. That might be the reason. Every municipal unit has a different bylaw. So what that looks like might influence the pickup. So, we may in fact be able to change our bylaw to be a bit more lenient around picking up at those periods of time. I know that, certainly if it doesn't get picked up, you wonder where it goes, right? And
People are complaining that since the dump in Pubnico was gone, there's more garbage everywhere. And
Yeah.
that's what they're complaining about a lot too. Just look on the side of the ditches all the time, even around home, it's awful. And a lot of it is that people do put out stuff for the garbage and it doesn't get picked up because you're not allowed to put it in the big, and it just stays there. And it stays we have big ditches and
Mhm.
it stays in there. And so when you do a community garbage pickup, this is what you're hauling out.
Mhm. Okay. So, it sounds
You
like
pick
this
up-
is
You
something,
pick up today and you drive by tomorrow and there's coffee cups and all kinds of stuff
Yeah.
yeah,
the next day,
And I know of another municipality, not in this area here, but they have a good garbage system, I know they do, and I'll be more than likely to ask them to have their, how they function, how much it costs them, just for an example.
alright,
I know that in Shelburne, they only have one blue bag. One blue
Yes.
bag system, just to throw in the mix here.
yes, they do.
They still only have one blue bag.
Yeah.
We have two in our municipality,
Yeah.
in our county. Shelburne has only one blue bag. So that must be a policy on there.
Yes,
They're not in waste check with us.
that's correct. Some don't have clear bags yet. in
That's
the
gonna be
province.
cheaper to administer everything.
well, you have to pay somebody to
So,
sort it,
I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
By one blue bag, Councillor Stewart, do you mean,
Paper and plastics
Paper
and,
and plastic.
can go
Together.
together? You don't mean one blue bag on the
Sure.
top, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right on, thanks.
Yeah, so it might be that the pickup cost is less, but maybe the sorting cost is more, I don't know.
yeah.
Good point.
I'm not sure. So,
Somebody's gotta sort it out.
yeah. So it sounds like it's something that you may want to revisit. So if you don't mind, I can put that on a parking lot and come
Yeah.
back to that, because it's unlikely to influence what we're doing here with the budget today.
Oh, no.
But it's a good conversation, because these are the things that you might be able to influence,
Yeah.
and so I'm glad. I don't want to kibosh it, so I'm gonna put it in the
Yeah.
parking lot, if that's okay. All right.
Okay,
So the other piece around that cost is the diversion costs, which include landfill, organics, and recycling. The organics is $75,000, the landfill's $162,000, and the recycling is $52,000. Those are all based on metric tons. They have varying rates. And I believe that the least expensive in terms of metric ton is the organics. So that's the least expensive to deal with for us. We actually don't own the compost facility. It's the town of Yarmouth that owns it. Everything else we own.
it's a good thing right now.
Well, yeah, that's had a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then the rest of it is spring and fall cleanup. There's your community cleanup program, which you have supported again this year. That's $14,000. It's actually up a little bit from last year. And waste check operational support is included in that number, as well as illegal dumping cleanup and dangerous and unsightly. So those are hot topics these days. So that number includes that. There's $7,000 currently under unsightly and dangerous premise. Our policy, what has occurred with unsightly and dangerous premises, for the most part, our experience has been that we accept complaints, we examine the area, and probably, this is not statistically accurate, but more than 50% of the time, the resident complies. They deal with it themselves. So that's obviously at their cost. When it gets to a situation where it's a bit over the top and they're not complying, the worst case scenario, of course, is that we go in and we do it ourselves and we bill them. So the billing goes on the tax bill of the resident. So it doesn't show here as an expense, right? So what does have a tendency to happen, however, in some cases, is that the cost of demolishing a house, for example, exceeds the value of that property. And then the property goes on tax sale, And we've seen occasions where we have, you know, sold that property for tax sale, but less than what we paid for to clean up.
Yeah.
So this is another opportunity for council to think about, you know, whether or not you agree with that approach, and whether you believe that there should be something else done in terms of supporting that kind of cleanup. So right now, what is essentially happening is we only incur a cost at the end when we sell a property for less than the tax bill. So in some cases, we actually have sold the property for at least that amount, and so the loss is zero. Okay, so that's I realize it's a lot of talk about a $7,000 number, but it's something that I think you've raised more than once, and you should understand that you know, you're not cleaning too many. You're not cleaning a house. You're not demolishing a house all by yourself at your cost for $7,000. It's just not happening.
No.
So that does not actually represent a lot of cleanup.
But even if it
Paid by
costs
us,
us,
right?
I think we owe that to our people.
Absolutely.
To clean up these properties somehow.
Absolutely.
So
Even if it costs us a little bit.
right.
But you can't start, you gotta be careful though.
Yeah, so I guess it speaks to, you know, again, this is something you may want to think about during the year, whether it impacts your budget now or later, is that you might consider what your plan will be around that moving forward. If that's important to you, the budget isn't reflecting that, that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That's something that's very important to me.
Yeah.
I would very much like to see that line item, you know, if we can steal from something, which I'm sure is not easy to do, and I understand that. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I mean, and I recognize that you're probably not the only counselor who is feeling that way. I guess what I'm suggesting is that you probably need to figure out exactly what that looks like first. Not to say that this number can't change, because it can.
I agree, yeah.
But yeah, you know, is it, if you're taking down a house, and you're gonna pay 100% of that, let's say, just as an example, this does maybe half a house.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
If that.
I know what it is.
So,
You do an outhouse.
so it might, it might do an outhouse. So anyway, I'm just,
Yeah.
like, it's not intended to do that, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying. So
no.
if you're intending on doing that, and if you're intending on doing that in the next 12 months, that number has to be looked at again.
I think that we still have to use the same system that we use, because otherwise you have people taking advantage of demolishing buildings and whatever.
Yeah.
Can you run into some court costs if you push this really heavy? Because I know, like Councillor LeBlanc, I've got 5 or 6 that something's gonna move this year, that's it.
Mhm.
So you could incur court costs, but I don't think because we had a situation in one of the district that we really worked upon. The person did come here in front of us, and I know how much better it is at the moment, but anyhow, you could go incur court costs. We haven't, obviously.
No, I think, and you can address it without court costs in some cases, it depends, but I really am not that strong in knowledge around the long form versus SOTs. I mean, that's something that I would like John Sullivan to come in and explain to you deeper.
Yeah.
I would just be giving you half-truths, I imagine. But they recently did an upgrade or an update in their courses, and so it would be fresh in their minds around what our options might be there. Yeah. So we can put that one aside if you wish, and then we might come back to that, or
Yeah.
did you want to address it now, or?
If you were to increase that, then it's gotta come from because it's balanced here, so
Yeah.
it would have to come from some other service or whatever
Yes.
that we have.
Yeah, it would have to come from another service or from an additional transfer from the operating.
Because
Yeah.
like in the garbage collection and
Or a
whatever.
hike in the tax rate.
Or hiking the
Or
tax
hike.
rate.
The tax rate, I know, that's right.
Yeah.
But the garbage collection, there's some costs there that we can't take from them to increase that one.
You could, but then it would increase the risk that you're gonna go over in those other.
That's it,
So,
exactly.
you know, just so that I'm clear, you know, those numbers that I'm budgeting. So for example, landfill 155 last year, I'm budgeting 162. Okay, well, we may not reach 162.
No, but we don't know that.
But we don't know
Don't
that.
know that, thank you, Danny.
No,
And my,
You
and.
don't have to move on that right away.
No,
No.
but there might be some wiggle there,
Yeah.
but not a lot, and it depends on what you wanna do,
Yeah.
I mean,
right?
there's always, you know, we have the spring pickup and the fall pickup. We could cancel the fall pickup because that's usually the light one, isn't it?
I've had them vary. I
It was last year.
Was
It
it?
was the spring that was the more expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Every year, I thought the spring was the most expensive one.
I think you're
I'm not
probably right.
suggesting that we eliminate the fall. I'm just saying that those are options, so.
Yeah,
How much is it, how much is the spring or the fall special pickup? You guys remember offhand? It's,
well, last year the total was 40, which was
20.
a lot more than what it's typically.
Wow, that's.
It was
inexpensive,
29,
so-
we budgeted 29 the year before, and we're within very
But that's
close.
just the pickup cost, isn't it?
That is.
Is
No,
that to pay at the transfer station too? Something,
well, how much would it be if we didn't have those guys stopping in every pile and picking out half the stuff? Because I put stuff today
Somebody picks it up,
and,
most of it.
I turned around and
It's gone.
it was gone. So,
that's all right.
yeah,
yeah.
I'm just searching it up here
all right.
quickly.
So we just wanna confirm what that number actually includes.
I can tell you that at the waste park, the manager was saying that this year, whether there's a lot of money in the area, but we're up in fees it's around 18%. I should say fees, sorry, in what's being brought this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
So it's high, very high.
We've talked about that before. There's one indicator in our financials that is telling of where the economy is and what our population is, and it's the cost of landfill disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you have more disposable income, you're buying more, you have more
That's
to
right.
dispose.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's an indicator of money or people or both, but generally when we see that come up, it's always a good economic sign.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of neat. to think
Yeah,
about.
it's a little interesting.
It's a good point.
So the 40 that we have under spring and fall is in fact only
The
the
pickup
pickup
itself.
itself.
Is
The
that,
land-
I'm sorry, Martin.
Go ahead.
Just throwing it out there,
Yeah.
is that our most significant bang for our buck? Like, that's a lot of cost just to save someone a 20-minute ride is kind of how I look at it.
It's more than a 20-minute ride from home.
Okay, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And some people don't have a truck
Mm.
to bring their
And I-
stuff
and
in.
I-
That's right.
Well, that we have to do, I mean.
Yeah.
And
Is
this
that
year, I could add up, it could end up in the woods, or, that's
what
another,
certainly
that's
would.
another, this
Yeah.
is what we've
Yeah.
discussed.
No, I just wanted to throw it out
No,
there.
that's a good point, but
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a 40-minute run, it'd be a 10-minute run back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
at the
good
wrong
point.
place.
French
Yeah.
Lake
Yeah.
Road or.
I never thought of it that way.
But
That's a
I'm
good
not, I
one.
mean, it doesn't mean.
that's a good question.
Spring and fall.
No.
Right, yeah, you could consider not doing both, that's an option, not to say that's not I'm not recommending anything at this point,
Yeah.
but
It's not a
those are the kinds of
significant
things.
amount on, you know, percentage-wise on a $7 million budget.
It's not 1
For the service
cent.
that it provides.
Okay,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
we're,
not-
this is a
not 1
service
cent.
that the whole municipality can,
And we're talking a
Can
lot
you
about
drive
it here,
yourself?
but it's not a significant, you
yeah,
know.
No, it's 1 cent on the
yeah.
rate,
Huh?
it's 1 cent. 1 residential cent is 43,
One
Oh.
residential cent, yeah,
Yeah.
Penny.
yeah.
yeah, it's almost $44,000, every cent is
Yeah, it's 1
44,000,
cent, yeah.
Okay,
in revenue.
all right.
So, okay, so I've noted that, we may wanna come back to dangerous and unsightly, so I've noted that, we'll come back to that potentially.
Yeah.
So that's it for the garbage. And I think I will probably defer to Marcia, am I right? Okay, to go to other expenses that you might consider.
Are you gonna bring up the budget or do you wanna just?
whatever you wanna do.
Makes no difference to me. I'm gonna highlight more like under the actual general government services, the administration part, there's basically no significant change from budget to budget last year to this year. Included in administration is salaries for the CAO, Director of Finance, Deputy Clerk. It's where all of our building expenses are incurred, our office expenses, our legal expenses, and it's also where our quarterly newsletter is expensed as well. Taxation department, again, very little change there. This is where all tax sale expenses, tax billing costs, tax rebates get recorded, along with all the exemptions. That's where the low exemption grant is placed, included as well with salaries. The IT department in there, this budget is actually down from last year. Part of that reason is we have switched the youth engagement section from the IT to the community development. We thought it was a better fit under community development than IT. So that's part of the decrease. There's also, this also is where the salary, of course, for the IT technologist is, all internet costs, phone and cell phone costs, all the software for the whole municipality itself, capital equipment for all departments. It's all budgeted under IT.
Under IT, just thinking because this is our year 4 and there's an election in the fall, the iPad that we have been using, which as far as I'm concerned have been working beautifully. I know I enjoy the iPad. Do we have budgeted new iPads for the upcoming year? Okay.
We do, and
Is that in this?
that's actually budgeted under council, capital
Okay.
equipment.
Okay,
Oh, that was my question,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
good, perfect.
Carrying on, common other expenses, common office expenses, that, it's down from last year. This is where the building and liability insurance is placed, along with just regular photocopy, postage meter expenses, leases, and stuff like that.
I thought that was in administration, you said office expenses. So you've got like, in the administration part, you've got some, and you've got some in the common office expenses.
Yeah, that's just kind of how we
Yeah, that's okay.
place
If-
them.
That's okay.
If it relates specifically to administration, it's in administration. If it's like, for example, photocopier, everybody uses, so it's common.
I get what you mean
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Insurance is common, yeah.
Not
I
just for
understand.
administration
Yeah.
itself. Then we have grouped the election, conferences, and memberships, and, of course, this one is up this year due to election year. We have budgeted $35,000 for the election. This is budgeting worst-case scenario 9 elections, so everybody's district, because we have no idea at this point, so we're better off to budget worst-case scenario. We may get some revenue back from the school boards if they have an election and we run an election for them, but at this point, we have no way of knowing that.
Conferences, there really hasn't been too many council members going to, I know, FCM this year, how many are going?
Just one.
Just one. Last year, how
One
many?
last year.
So,
The only one last year.
yeah, yeah, so those
I'm
expenses
going
are,
this year.
even though budgeted, there should be down.
We've actually, the ones that I'm discussing right now are more for staff
Oh, okay,
conferences.
sorry.
Oh,
Councils are listed under council.
There you go.
Okay, yeah,
Ask the question, get the answer, thank you.
yeah.
And there's also some memberships and staff training included in there as well.
Okay, yeah.
In the election one, the school boards, do you budget for a school board election in there? Because we get some back from the school board, right? So
Yes.
how do you, is it in there to pay for it, but you said we might get some money back? Does that mean that we'll get some back because you've added more into this one? I'm not sure.
Is there actually a cost included for the school board election?
Yeah, so typically, yes, typically what happens is, like, we don't know whether we're gonna have a school board
No,
election or not.
exactly.
And so there's two elections in the Tri-County, and there's one in Conseil Scolaire. There's one for the African Nova Scotian, and there's, in Tri-County, which was the only one that we had last year. I don't believe we had a CSAP or a Tri-County, election last year.
Yes, we did.
Did we? For Conseil
CSAP
Scolaire?
we did.
Okay, CSAP,
Yes.
my apologies. We didn't have Tri-County.
No.
We had African Nova Scotian Tri-County, and then we had CSAP.
Exactly.
And so both of them, pay a reimbursement. I
That's
think
right.
the budget anticipates one reimbursement, not both, because we're not sure whether they're actually gonna have an election. So there are additional costs when we take on the school board elections, but typically that it really depends. How much of it is incremental? It depends on how many municipal elections we have. Because what happens is, let's say, District 1 doesn't have an election for municipality, but there's a school board election, we have to pay an amount for the e-voting service for that location, and it's based on eligible voters. So if there was neither one, there'd be no cost, right?
Right.
So the incremental cost does depend on
Oh, yeah.
on that. And so, the other option we may go with, which maybe we do this, is that we say, the heck with e-voting for CSAP and Tri-County, we would just do paper ballots. That's not impossible. That way you could control the costs, and you'd know them, you would know what those costs would be, and you could potentially reduce election costs that way, assuming that there are acclamations in municipal places and that there is an election for a school in that same location.
So I guess what you're trying to say is that basically it's impossible to figure out what the budget for the school boards is.
Well, what I'm saying is that the cost depends
Yeah.
on whether it's incremental to us or not.
Yeah.
If it's incremental, we get it recovered.
Okay.
All incremental costs, we get
Okay.
recovered from them.
But if there's only the incremental, because if there's an election in District 1, then you have to have, you're paying for the same amount of voters, you have to pay for them anyway.
Correct.
Because there's an election. But if there's none, then you have to pay in District 1 because of the school board, so they would pay for that.
They would pay all costs relating
All
to
costs for
District
that
1.
one, yeah.
And I believe that we are able to allocate a cost for the returning officer as well. There are other costs that
Yes.
may not be incremental, but we're the ones incurring it, and we're the ones running the election.
Yes.
So we can actually build that cost as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not significant anyway. We can't vary a whole lot.
Yeah, we hope we budgeted and I don't wanna call it worst case scenario, the most democratic scenario, meaning 9 elections, right? I mean, that's what we budgeted for.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And
Makes
only,
sense.
and only one reimbursement, so
Yeah.
generally it's been a
Anyway.
shade below 30,
Yeah.
what we've experienced. Yeah. Okay.
Alright, so moving on with recreation, active living, the recreation budget has decreased this year, and it's primarily due to one line item, which is the repairs and capital projects. The tennis court project is now complete, so we decreased that budget line fair amount. Also included in recreation is all rec-related events, senior programs, day camp programs. This is where the volunteer banquet gets recorded, and all field maintenance costs. Pubnico Library, there's no major change from last year as well. This is basically the operational cost of running the library and janitor wages and benefits. It's included in that department there. Community development, again, no major cost difference from last year. Included under community development is the scholarship initiative, the community projects, the farmer's market, the tent operational cost is included in there. And it's also where we moved the youth engagement from IT we've now moved it to community development. And lastly, the courthouse and archives, there's a small increase from last year. Included here are all operational costs for the archives and the tour guide wages, staff conferences and travel. Also, there's a capital equipment cost you're gonna see there of $14,000, which is the same as budgeted last year. It was to purchase a microfilm reader, but it was never purchased last year, so we're basically just moving the money into this year. So if there's any questions, sure.
Community Development Office, so that includes the salary of our,
Community Development Officer.
and now she's at, how many, what percent is she working?
100.
100, okay.
Full-time.
So she was at, last year she was what, at?
I think was it 3/5? You should work 3 days a week.
Anyway,
4.
No, it's
Four.
100.
so
It
now
was
it's 100.
4/5.
Yeah.
You took 1 day off, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it might have been like 3.5 or something.
Okay.
Something like that,
so
but
now,
now,
now it's 100%.
It's full.
Yep.
Okay,
since September, right?
Yes.
Yes.
okay. Good.
So there's a couple other lines under community development initiatives that I will spend like 3 minutes on. Yeah, right. Argyle Economic Development Initiatives, that used to be a big number. What we saw was it wasn't working the way that we wanted it to. That is primarily, potential investments in aquaculture if required. So at the time we do the budget, typically we don't necessarily know how much of that we're actually going to use. Last year we used 0 because we were able to generate that activity using provincial resources. The provincial government is showing a heavy interest in this area, and they've increased their budget investments in aquaculture. So there could be leveraging opportunities, and so we wanted our budget to be prepared for that. Okay. There's also an outstanding request for a wharf repair that is related to aquaculture. That would be in this line item as well, presuming that's something that the council agrees on. And then Argyle Tourism Initiatives, which is the last line, community development. Most of our tourism goes to Yasta, $68,000. That's what they've asked for this year. That's down slightly from last year because they have one less project. But well within what we're accustomed to paying for that service. And the Argyle Tourism Initiatives are monies that we're investing directly in Argyle for tourism initiatives. 50 plus things to do in Argyle are covered in that budget. Typically what happens is we have wage support for an employee of the CAPEB. That happens from time to time, that we have wage support, or they get a student, but not 100% of the funds are there to cover that student. So we have a tendency to get those requests. So we're considering the provision of that if that occurs, and other similar investments. So there's typically bon temps. Anything bon temps would be in that line. In the prior year, you would have seen a separate line for Starlight designation. That was because we had funding from the federal government and from bon temps to run the project. I think any future request that bon temps has for future projects, wouldn't look the same as that unless we were a co-applicant in a project.
Councillor Surratt?
Would the banner initiative, if council so chooses, when we get some numbers on that, would that mean that number 2?
I'm not sure
Or
that
you're not budgeting for that at all? Just in case council goes into that?
I'm not sure that line item captures that.
Okay.
It's possible that it does, okay? But I'm not, that's a good pickup, Councillor Surratt. I don't think that number includes that. So I'm not sure where we are on the cost side of things, whether we have that information. We're still waiting. We have estimates, yeah. So I'm putting that in the parking lot in case we want to come back to that number.
Yeah.
Okay. Did we miss anything? I mean, oh yeah, right, okay, Public Works, yes. We did want to mention Public Works, that number includes your part-time facilities maintenance person who has been hired and is working now. So that's included in that number. That is higher than last year, and that's the primary reason why. This year, just so that you know, from an operational perspective, we will be leasing a vehicle for I think it's 4 months. It's probably more economical for us to do that as opposed to paying mileage. So we have the Ranger, and then the recent purchase last year of the second Ford, and so there'll be we're looking at signing a lease for 4 months for a Ford Escape, and that will be used by the building inspector, so it should be suitable for his purposes. Because we don't need it all year, we struck a short-term deal, and that works out for us. So just if you're wondering, you see a third vehicle, you'll know where that's coming from, and that we didn't buy it, we're actually leasing it for 4 months. So that's about as much time as we were going to spend on that document. Now we have two other documents here that we could go over, and I guess I'll ask council. One of them is really high level, that shows the pie chart, I guess, and the other is the actual detailed operating budget. So I don't know where. I mean, you have seen this budget, so you may have questions about line items that you'd want to raise, and the best way to do that is probably to go to the detail. Otherwise, you may, if you want to stay high level, we can stay high level with the pie chart and the 2-year at a glance information.
I think that's probably the way to go, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
I've got nothing on, I
Yeah.
looked at the details, I have no questions.
So we'll go into the high level then.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you look at the hearing no begging and pleading for more accounting talk, we'll keep going. So this is a pie chart. We do this every year in the newsletter. So this shows how our expenses are allocated. It's just another way to show the same information. So the top 3 expenses or investments in services that we have are general government services, which includes your common other, your election, your IT, your administration, a lot of your general services, 23%. Education, which is a mandatory payment at 22%. Protective services, about 50% of that or more is actually mandatory, but it does include fire. It doesn't just include police, it includes fire and other type services at 23%. So, and the rest are much smaller, 10% being environmental health, and so on. So these percentages don't change considerably from year to year. You know, you might see a 1 or 2%. Keeping in mind, 1 or 2% is, you know, between $70,000 and $150,000, depending on, like, if it's 2%, it's $150,000. So that's a considerable shift if you think about it, to move from one place to another.
Our auditing fees, I've noticed in the different chart services that I'm in, I don't know about the other councillors what they're at, but the auditing fees have skyrocketed in the past couple of years. You know, and how are ours for the municipality? Are we pretty well compared to last year? The audit fees, I see 25,000. Wasn't there? Are we pretty well, I guess, too?
Yeah.
In your opinion?
The audit fees, you know, climb only slightly year to year for us. And at times, there are certain years where it actually goes down because it depends on what services we actually get. So in terms of auditing the financial statements of the municipality of Argyll proper, if we didn't have, you know, extra audits for special projects or anything like that, it's been going, I mean, if I look at 5 years, it's increased, but it hasn't increased in a considerable way. You know, there are things that influence your audit fee. One is preparation. So if you're extremely prepared, if your accounting is completed, then the auditor is auditing. They're not accounting and auditing. So depending on the level of preparation, the costs can go up or down. I think there were a couple of years where we actually did our own financial statement, and so that significantly reduced the cost. We can't do that anymore because their software doesn't allow us to do that anymore. So we actually pay for that service now. but, you know, it might have been $1,500 or $1,800 that we were saving when we were doing our own. So, anyway, so it's, and, you know, it's not an area that has fluctuated considerably for us, but we have seen it in other regional organizations where it's fluctuated.
I guess now I understand the shared services where I've seen something really bump up. I can understand why, because there was different projects and stuff on the go, and I didn't realize it. It would boost it up, okay.
Yes.
Your cost, thank you.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
realize that.
Our activity as municipalities doesn't change considerably, but in some of our regional partnerships, that could change, and those changes can be considerable. That can impact the amount of time it takes to audit.
I understand now, thank you.
So I guess what you're saying, if we were going to do our statements here, we would have to spend more money for software or for.
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
cost us.
It would cost us, I think, right now, I guess my point is that the software that they're using would be cost prohibitive for us.
Yeah.
It would be, they might as well do it themselves,
Yeah.
just about.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the complexity, is there's a lot of work that has to be done in the setup,
Yeah.
and they have people that are really good at that,
Yeah,
and we don't know the software.
that's right.
So,
That's good.
so
Yeah.
we don't, it's better this way.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
The cost for not doing it, but there's a bigger cost for doing it.
Today, but 5 years
Yeah.
ago it wasn't the case.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. So what you have in front of you now in the screen is the 2-year comparison at a glance, and this is the variance from actual to budget. So this line is different than what you see in your operating budgets. I know that there's the question that's always every year is, okay, well, why don't you compare? You're comparing budget to budget, but you're really comparing, you know, what you guessed to what you're guessing. You know, let's compare what happened to what you're guessing, and so this is actually a reflection of that. Okay, so your taxes, as you see, is so I'll spend a little time on revenues because it's the first time we've actually talked about revenues. Only to say that there are very few revenues that have changed considerably. There are certain revenues that require us to make estimates, so you should be aware of that. So deed transfer taxes require us to estimate how much that might be. So traditionally, deed transfer taxes has been between $110,000 and $130,000 a year. We were always budgeting really low, and so we kicked that up this year to be a little closer to what we think is reality, and we hope we didn't overdo it. So so that is an estimate that has changed this year. It's a little less conservative. Your taxes, basically your increases, there is no rate increase to your corporate or residential taxes, so any increase is based entirely on increase in assessment. And as you all know, the cap on assessment is 0.3%, so there was very, very little increase on the cap. For people that were capped, there was virtually no increase. There were, in some cases, some decreases in market value. There was some market value adjustments. So, you know, a lot of what we saw in terms of increase might be new construction, right? There might be some new construction or improvements to homes. And depending on where it is, there are some situations where people came off the cap. If you change ownership, if you purchase a new property, then that property that was capped is no longer capped for that year. They catch up to market value. So all of those things, we've not measured how much of those things impacted your increase because your increase is so slight that it wasn't really, we didn't think you'd be that interested. But it's a really light year for that.
When we had some decreases in assessment on residential, have we also had in commercial?
We did.
Commercial went down also?
We had some adjustments in both, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, some of that was offset by new, but,
Yeah.
and I don't know if next year the same will happen.
Yeah.
But there has been, the past couple of years, there's been some light increases or even in some cases decreases. And of course, there's no cap for commercial, so if your property reduced in value, your taxes will decrease.
That's right, yeah.
Whereas in residential, you could have a market value decrease, but you could still have a 0.3%
Yes.
increase because the cap
Because
is
of the
lower
cap.
than market.
That's right.
So
yeah.
that'll be something a little confusing, because the resident might get the assessment in January, may have gotten that assessment, and said, oh, look at that, my market's down, my taxes will come down. Then they'll get the bill, and they'll say, that didn't happen. And the reason is because they actually weren't paying tax on that market.
No,
They were paying tax on the capped
Cap,
value,
yeah.
which was lower. Okay?
yeah,
So you might get some questions
oh, yeah.
when the tax bills come out. The other new thing in revenue is the sales of services. You'll see that number go up next year. This is a partial year. That's the sale of the wind energy, the Wellington project. So where you see sales of services, it's 100% based on the Wellington sale of wind.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay,
So there's nothing else that we sell?
yeah,
We have revenue from our own sources that we wouldn't consider necessarily a sale of services.
Okay.
And then we have services to other governments. So it's rare that we actually sell services to people, to a third party such as this. So
Okay.
there are other ways we generate income internally, like day camp revenues, and that's like revenue from own sources.
Okay.
So if we're delivering a service and we're charging for that service to people, residents, that's not showing under sales of service.
Okay.
That's actually just a recovery of some of the cost of the service that we're providing. Services to other governments is actually the sale of corporate services, IT and accounting, to other government units. So we sell IT services to the Industrial Commission, thank you Scott, and we sell accounting and IT services to the REN, thank you Sheila and Scott. So so we get cost recovery based on that service.
Do you get anything from the water, East Pubnico water? No, we do that for no charge, I believe. Right?
No, that's a great point. It doesn't show. I don't think it does. I don't think it shows there. It shows under revenue from own sources. But what we do is we allocate some of the time every year. Vaughn does some work for East Pubnico Utility, and so the revenue comes in as revenue to the municipality. And which offsets some of like it shows as a cost to East Pubnico, but it reduces the costs to West Pubnico. Sorry, I said that wrong initially. The full salary is shown under West Pubnico sewer. 100% of that is shown under West Pubnico. Then that service is sold to the East Pubnico water utility for a meager amount. It's not a big amount, and so that's showing as a recovery in the West Pubnico sewer.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'd say the only other thing that's super different is the transfers from reserves, and I think we've explained that.
Yeah.
That's the money coming for the Deltex. So we've hit a lot of the major expenses. So rather than go line by line on this, I have it up on screen. If there was any question on a line item, myself or Marcia would be happy to answer them.
Any questions or? So what we're looking for here is a motion to approve the budget, right?
Well, before we do that, I would imagine that we probably want to address the parking lot, see whether we want to make those changes this
Oh,
year or
yes.
consider them for
Oh,
next,
Yeah.
and see how we can.
I thought the parking lot was outside, we were going to leave.
Yeah.
I call it the parking lot because I just want to park it, because I
Yeah.
didn't want it to be about that and come back. So what we said was, one of the things I think, I'm just reviewing for your benefit,
Yeah.
how we pick up garbage. Well, we're not going to be able to change the budget for that
Not
this year.
changing this year.
So that might be something you might ask, that might be a notice of motion that you want to table for a future meeting, to have staff start to collect that data, collect that, what it looks like across the province and in other places, how that works.
Yeah.
We're happy to do that work, particularly if it results in it being better or more efficient. So that's one. The other two, I think, were Argyle Tourism, the potential banner, Yes, Argyle Tourism, the potential banner project is not necessarily included in the number, so we should probably have a conversation about that. And then the other one is the dangerous and unsightly budget that we said that we might revisit. So what is the will of
Well,
council?
the number one, you mentioned we can't do anything about it this year.
Correct.
That's all.
That won't impact this year's
So,
budget.
do we have the cost on those banners, or?
Yes, did we get anything? It's like, yeah. We've asked the question a few times. Chris, I know.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up the budget on that.
Silence, good television.
Huh?
It's good for TV.
Do you want me
Silence.
to,
I
do you
think
want
our
me to
mics
send,
aren't
do you want me
working.
to send it to you, or do you want it?
You can go, well, it's up to you.
There was different options. The prices ranged anywhere between 14 to 35,000, based on the amount of tourism sites that we would put the banners all at, and the amount of banners we would put at each site. So we had cost estimated 15 tourism sites based on the sites that were mentioned or shown in the pamphlet we had with all of the different tourism locations with the signs that corresponded with the signs. And then we had three banners per site and 4 banners per site with different sizes of banners. So that's why it gives you such a variance in the cost. So if you took 3 banners per site with a banner that was 24 by 60, you would get a cost roughly 14,000. But if you took 4 banners per site that were 30 by 72, you would get $35,000 in cost. So it would very much depend on how much banners you would like and how many per site and what the size would be. It's roughly 250 to 600 per banner.
Chris, he offered to, let's say Dave Sweeney from Nova Scotia Power, offered his staff to install it for nothing. He did say, he said, are you ready, we'll do it. But we were not ready with pricing and stuff like that. They were willing to go and do it at no charge, actually.
Yeah.
Whether
So
he do it again, I'm sorry, Andre, but whether he do it, in 2, 3, or 4 months down the road, I'm not sure. But
So the prices you're quoting there is for the material.
That's right, for the product.
Yeah, if you recall, the product that we had suggested would require 1 installation, right? And then you could do it yourself, right? You could put it up and down yourself. And so the concern was like, if we had the more typical banner, would Nova Scotia Power continuously take it down and put it up every year, right? And if the answer was yes, then there might be some cost savings there, right?
It's cheaper for the typical banners that Nova Scotia Power would put up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flag tracks, which was the one that you could put up standing on the ground, were much more expensive. But it was a one-time installation.
Right.
So with Nova Scotia Power seeming to provide their service of installing the banners, we could go with the typical banners that you put on brackets.
And they would let us put those on their posts?
Yeah, they would choose where to put them, like on what pole and what location, to make sure it doesn't intrude with their work, but yeah, they would. That was the indication that it seemed like Dave was giving us at Nova Scotia Power.
I thought it was a good initiative. I may as well say a few words and then say what they want. I think it would certainly brighten up our municipality, the 15 sites that we've got. Tourists going by, you see something flapping, a flag or something, and, you know, might entice people to stop, whether it be Hips and Bridge, whether it be, Tuna Festival, or Tuna Museum, or whatever have you at the courthouse. I think it's a great thing. I've seen it in Clare. It is impressive as far as I'm concerned, and for the rest of you, but, you know, for 14,000, the lower line one, you know, if the municipality can afford it without putting the tax rate up, if it involves putting the tax rate up, no, I'm totally against that, obviously. Can't afford to put the tax rate up, but, if it didn't impact, then there was a way to install it. I personally think it's a, you know, something to entice our tourists, and, you know, at least I really liked it when we had to during the Tridakati. I thought it was so impressive to have those flags up. A lot of people commented. Anyhow, that's my 10 cents worth.
Those 15 sites, is that where we have those panels already?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have the list of the sites there?
Yeah, I do. They would be. St. Peter's Rock in Commons Hill, Wedgeport Tuna Museum, Lower Wedgeport, Butte de la Croix, Wedgeport, Founding Families Monument in Upper Wedgeport, Tusket River, which is at our little park there next to the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Courthouse and Archives, Salt Haystacks in Amiros Hill, Chapelle site in Amiros Hill, Chapelle site at Rocco Point, Saint-Anne Church in SAR, Hipson's Creek Stone Bridge in East Pubnico, Musée des Acadiens, West Pubnico, Le Village Historique Acadien in Lower West Pubnico, Dennis Point Wharf, and Pubnico Point Wind Farm. Those would be the 15.
So you say 3 banners per site?
I had costed out 3 per site and 4 per site, with 3 different sizes of banners. 24 by 60, 30 by 60, and 30 by 72.
And just so I can be clear, the conversation we're having is whether or not we want this, but am I understanding that you have not budgeted for?
I think that number certainly wouldn't do that project, no. There might be room in that number, but
Which
I would,
number, sorry?
the tourism,
15.5?
the 15, yeah, it's right now the Argyle Tourism Support is 15,500. You know, Chris has indicated to us that project alone is 14. I
Right.
can assure you that's not included in that number for sure, yeah. So where that comes from, well, that could be considered a capital project, because it is in fact something that we would probably own and manage, so it could come out of our capital reserve, or it could come out of the operating fund. Those are your 2 options, and so the operating fund could be, you obviously have ixnayed the increased tax rate, so the only other place you get 14,000 is if you transferred more from the operating reserve, or if you decreased other expenses to do this.
You could also choose to purchase less banners this year and purchase 1 a year for the next 3 years if you
Right.
want.
There's an option that I like. Yeah.
Absolutely
There's an
correct.
option I like. Yeah. Don't know the rest. If you know.
Would be
I would enjoy, or not enjoy, but
2,500.
I don't mind spending tax dollars on something you can see and that people enjoy, like, we mentioned earlier, the tennis court projects, just a little tidbit of information. I went to play tennis there the other night and I had to wait, like, much more. So people are enjoying it, right? Things, I know this isn't saying anything. I had to wait for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, quite a bit of a chance, but yeah, we had to wait to play, so. I don't know, something like this, I like the idea of maybe buying 1 per year or something.
Same here.
Makes it more manageable.
So that would be 15 then.
For this year, if you it would be 15 if it was just 1 this
So it would bring us down to about
5?
It'll be a third of 14.
Yeah.
Oh, 5.
Oh, 5,000.
Thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Give or take.
Yeah, it'll be 5, 10, or 15, right?
Yes.
5 for 1, 10 for 2, 15 for 3, and that's really ballparking,
So-
right?
No,
Yeah.
but that gives us an idea.
So 5 fits in the budget or not?
Yes.
Can fit in the budget? Might fit in the budget?
It'll be tight.
Five I could do without changing the budget, I think, I'm not 100% sure. My suggestion would be, you know,
Can we
think
go in the
about what,
capital reserve?
you can, absolutely, think about what you want the project to look like. If you want it to be multi-year, you know, from my perspective, like, is one, just putting one per site, is that enough, right? You probably wanna do all sites at once. So those are your options. Like you could do half and half, you know, you could do, there's a variety of things you can do there.
Flat and a half.
You can't do that. So I'd say, you know, the safe number, if you're gonna do it over multiple years, is 10. 5 might be there already, I'm not 100%. So, you know, if it's something you wanna do this year and you wanna do it all, the capital reserve, that's what it's for, and if you feel like that's the right thing to do, then we can actually shift that over to the capital budget conversation and leave it alone for this budget, right? It would go there,
Right on.
right?
And the castle, yeah.
So,
Well, regardless what we do, we have to do all the sites.
Yeah.
Really,
Yes.
we
We
should.
can't do part of the
No,
site.
no.
Everybody has to be
Everybody
treated.
has- equally.
Treated
Has to
equally.
have a flag.
Yeah,
Yes,
At least
exactly.
one.
so whether you wanna do,
I would go and put everything this year, then it's done, but I know it's, if it's one each, then that's fine.
But if we can afford it in the capital budget, if we can fit it in there, like you said.
well, we can,
yes,
And we
just have to
can't.
transfer more.
We just have to transfer more.
no, there's room in the
And it
capital
would be
budget
done.
for that.
And we're not in a jam, it's stuck with nothing in front of a jam.
No, not for that amount.
Not for that one. I think we should, I may as well open my big mouth and say, that maybe I'm pushing you guys,
I
but push back.
think we should, is that a motion or not?
Oh, I didn't, oh yeah, I did. I certainly make a motion.
No, I'm just asking.
No, that's good, I appreciate that. I certainly make a motion, we put all the banners up this year and go into our capital reserve,
All the banners, like 3, yeah.
all sites with 3 each.
3 times 15, is it 15 sites?
Yeah.
15, yeah.
45.
Yeah.
Okay.
To make that a motion.
I'll second it.
So do we have, a question on the motion, do we have a design or nothing?
No,
That's,
that's more operational, like, we may look at the situation and the flags might look different in different locations, like not all locations are necessarily, like, the idea, I think, was to put it where the Acadian sites were,
Yes.
right? So is that being entirely inclusive, right? So, do all the flags look the same? So,
Okay.
Yeah.
but those are operational questions, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you're gonna do the project is something that we wanna know here today, and then we come back to you with,
Can I-
if you make different ones, it may change the budget amount too, eh?
May,
If they're not all the same, if you're making it all the same, it should be,
yeah.
but anyway, whatever, yes, Danny.
Are we too late to have that done for this summer? Like, if we don't even know what design is and whatever, is that something, is a possibility there that we could have them up this summer?
I don't know.
It would be later in the summer before they would be installed.
Yeah.
Because Nova Scotia Power they wouldn't do them all in one day. They would
No.
do them as they come along to the sites that we want them to be installed at.
Good question, I was thinking of that too, you can't,
But I guess regardless, if we're gonna do it, if we're gonna do it and we wait for, because if we can't get it this summer, we can get it next summer. If we don't do it in this budget, then next summer, next budget will be the same situation. If we're gonna do it, whether we get it this summer or not, I would say we go ahead. And if it happens this summer, it's fine. If it doesn't, then at least we'll have it for next year.
We'll be ready for
Because
next
if
year.
we wait, we're gonna be discussing this again,
Yeah.
and we're gonna be too late again.
yeah, yeah.
Agree.
So these signs, once they're put up at the end of the tourism season, they're taken down
They come down.
by Nova Scotia Power? Okay.
That's the idea.
And then the next year, when they put them back up, there's a fee for, is there an additional fee?
Unless the
What
arrangement
happens
would
is the
change.
brackets would probably stay up.
They would, yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So if all 15, I assume that all 15 sites have been contacted and told about this project?
Nope.
Okay,
Because nothing's been decided, that's why.
right.
Probably doesn't go on the property anyway, I mean, that part of it, it's not,
I mean, it's an enrichment of their property.
That's right, yeah.
I think we'd want to,
Yeah,
as
next
again,
year.
it's an operational issue, we'd want to engage them to decide on design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just
Right,
thinking, yeah.
and
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's
exactly.
how we would do that.
And
Yeah.
location.
Yeah, and location.
And
Any more
location,
questions?
yeah.
And location, yeah.
Any more questions or comments on this?
Question?
So what have we decided? I guess we had a lot of discussion here, I just want to be clear.
Well, I
15
think,
sites, 3 per site.
Motion was, yeah, 15 sites, 3 per site, at a cost of no more than 14,000.
Well, I don't know.
We don't know that.
Maybe I better not put that there.
so the only, on the question then, the only question I'd have on the question is which budget? So
Capital
is it
reserve.
capital reserve? Okay, just for clarity, then it's capital reserve. So it won't impact what we've done here, it will impact what you'll see when we go to the capital
Do
reserve.
we have a maximum that we're willing to, you know, because we don't have a price,
Sorry.
Don't we have a price of 14,
No, but you may
Four-
go different ones.
Right, 14 would be for 45 20 by 60 banners at each site. No, 45 total, sorry.
Could I add there, at a maximum of $15,000, it could work within that budget? Could I add
It
that
comes
to
to
the-
16, if it comes to 1610, 1510, what do you do?
Rob Peter to pay for all that.
So the motion is what, sorry?
How much? Maximum of how much?
Maximum of 16,000, 15,000. 15 is,
Okay,
number, yeah.
seconder agrees with that?
He seconded.
I did, I didn't realize we were putting a cap.
Would you prefer no cap?
It would ensure the projects went along.
Yeah.
15 would do it.
We're talking pennies here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like according to Chris, that 15 would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the only variable might be the US dollar if we're getting it from the American.
Not with the flag shop, not with the.
Not with flag.
Not with the regular banner.
Oh,
It's from
perfect, that
Darwin.
was the slide one. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, so
Okay.
15 should be,
and I guess I just threw it out there so,
Yeah.
you know, we don't get a shock, it's, all of a sudden it's 25,000, right?
Yeah.
Just, you know, just so we're on the safe side.
typically anything that goes above budget comes here first anyway, so you'll get another crack at it if it's a different number.
Yeah.
Well, we could change the line, say that.
You could say do less, right?
I'll second that for sure.
Okay,
Okay,
all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
I have to get going.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So the only other amount was the dangerous and unsightly, and, I don't know that you wanna maybe look at that during the year and then maybe adjust for next. That's an option you have.
I mean, we have a final figure there, we have a figure that it's included in. What would happen if, I mean, we could go over on that item if, and still stay within the final figure, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
So we're budgeting things that we're not sure, which we could be less. So there could be money in there,
Without question.
in the whole budget
Yeah,
item
Yeah.
to cover
Could
that
be.
if the occasion came up, right?
Could be.
I mean, yeah, it could be, we don't know that,
Yeah.
exactly, we don't know that. Any more than we know if we increase that budget, we may not have one to do this year. You know, a budget is that, you're estimating. So, I don't know, I would think that we might be able to leave it the way it is, and if the occasion comes up, then we look at it through the year. I mean,
Yeah.
if
you're talking about unsightly?
unsightly.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I would
go.
I agree with that.
I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I agree
You know.
with you on that.
and I think what we should do
What we
during,
have been doing.
Yeah,
during the year as counselors is, if there is properties, that, you know, we should
we look at
really
it.
kinda, you know, take a close look at what there is out there and what, you know, so that we can come up with a figure, because, you know, right now it's a $7,000
Yeah.
figure, but, you know, we're not,
No,
Yeah.
we
You
don't
know.
know.
We don't know.
yeah. So,
Okay, we have people looking at them and picking out the worst ones and trying to work with.
Exactly,
you
yeah.
know.
Okay, so
I
I'm
would-
hearing,
I would leave that, I guess, what
I would leave
what
it.
we're
Same
saying
here.
here is.
okay.
okay. So, So I'm hearing that we're going to leave so that basically means that the operating budget has not changed based on this conversation.
No.
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
And so the only other obvious thing that I didn't say was the commercial and residential tax rates in the numbers are at $2.25 per 100 for commercial and $1.07 per 100 for residential.
Which is no change.
And that is no change.
No change.
There are changes in other rates, like there have been small increases in the Tusket and West Pubnico sewer rates. Only those people have paid that. And there is a slight change in the capital fee for Tusket that changes every year. Only the people on the Tusket sewer that have not paid the full $2,500 amount at the time of the project are paying that.
Yeah,
It's like 109.
that's money that's in and out
Yeah, I mean, it's for that project.
for the broadcast.
So that's it. Unless there were any questions.
So you're looking for a motion to accept
To approve.
this budget, the operating budget?
Correct.
Yeah, to approve.
To approve, yes.
To be
Approve,
approved.
yeah.
I will move to approve the operating budget as presented.
Second.
When you're doing this, we're not approving, are we approving the rates right now?
Not yet,
no.
Not yet, right, just the budget, okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
If you're gonna vote nay for the budget, we're gonna have to have an election.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, there is an election this year.
yeah.
Okay, so there's just the capital reserve left, and this one I will breeze through. So new this year is, and what you see in front of you, I have it on this is different than what you're presenting, because as the motion was made, I made the change on the spreadsheet
Oh, okay.
to have the
I
15,000,
read
so. So the yellow, that's not yellow, it's orange.
Well,
The orange is your regular capital reserve.
signify by your copy now.
And the purple is the gas tax budget. This is the first time that I've separated those two. We're supposed to account for them separately, and we do in our books, but when we were presenting the budget, we were showing it all as one. So this is new this year. So I'll stick with the orange. The orange, 120,000 coming in as so these are the revenues coming into the reserve. 120,000, you may see that to be familiar. That's our annual transfer that we bring in every year. This 55,000 represents monies that we're going to use from our reserves. Okay, so in fact, what's going to happen in the capital reserve this year, if everything goes as planned, is that we'll have $55,000 less in that account than we did when we started. Okay, so that's what that yellow highlighted number indicates. The interest income on bank balance, I'm showing that as decreased because I'm expecting to spend money. So as you spend money, less money available, less interest. I can assure you that that's a conservative estimate. That will come in higher. So total revenues of 215,000. So we scroll down a little bit more and we get into the expenses. And so what the regular capital reserve will expend in the next 12 months is planning for the admin building. I realize it says admin building and storage expansion. It really is the admin building. So we're not building an admin building for $150,000, but the expectation is that we would do planning and we would get to detailed design so that the construction would probably occur in the spring, summer of next year. That's why you're not seeing a big number there. Okay. Yarmouth International Airport infrastructure. There will be a capital requirement coming from the airport. I'm not 100% sure what that's going to be just yet. That is work still ongoing. So what I'm anticipating is that there are certain things that are urgent that must happen, and what we're trying to determine is whether there's monies, because if you recall, you paid an amount for emergency infrastructure. Not all of that has been spent, so we'd like to use that in the best way possible first, and then perhaps need this amount after. So what this represents, because we're at 29%, you know, it represents a total investment of about $138,000. I'm not convinced that it'll be that high. That's why the budget is showing 40. It should be high for the year. You could literally spend $28 million at the airport. As you know, there's been some requests for major capital retrofit of that facility. This is not what that is. This is smaller items that may require capital. So this may or may not occur, is what I'm saying. This will depend on the other two partners, because this is over and above the agreement. Tourism signage initiative, I don't think I have to go too far on that one. And then the Hipson Bridge improvements, we're estimating $10,000 to that. That might actually be a little low. We don't know until we go see.
Do you know if they went today?
They were supposed to go Thursday. I thought it was
Today.
Thursday.
The 17th.
I thought it was Thursday, but either way, we haven't heard. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, how would you, maybe some unfair question, you put 10,000, like.
You know, we
You're
could
just
have.
taking a wild guess?
Well, we
It will
don't
be
we don't know what they're going to find, and so once they find something, you know, 10,000 doesn't get you that far. So, but what we wanted was to seal it so that the water wouldn't damage. That was the intention, right? So, what the bridge needs might be more than that, but what it needs for the next 12 months might be that or close to that. And that's what is the best guess.
No.
Not knowing. So, and I realize that might in fact be light, and we may have to come back and ask council to reconsider that amount. If you wish for that amount to increase now, it's your budget. It's your budget. If you'd rather be a little bit more safe and a little less sorry, that amount can come up. So that's it for that capital budget, and then we have the gas tax budget. So the gas tax budget includes things that are paid for by gas tax only, and it's break even. So it doesn't just include things that gas tax pays for. What I mean by that is there are other revenue amounts that are being listed there. So if we have a gas tax project that has multiple funders, the multiple funders are showing in the revenues. So I'm gonna actually talk about the actual gas tax we spend last. What I'll talk about is that we're expecting at least $15,000 to come from PCAP. We've already received that money, so that'll just be applied towards the Wedgeport project. And so we're expecting 15,000 there. There may be more. We've applied for more, but we haven't budgeted for it because we really have no idea whether we're gonna get it. This is a for sure. So the other revenues that we have showing are transfers from the municipality and town of Yarmouth for the track and field project. Right now, it looks like the track and field project will start slower than we anticipated. We're going after ACOA and other funding, and what we're finding is it's going to be a challenge because the project doesn't quite fit the eligibility criteria in every way. So we either have to wait for something else to come out, or we have to change the project slightly. So we expect that the province won't be coming in this year. They might be coming in next year. And so but we are anticipating some costs in that area for planning. So that's why we're showing $25,000 from each of the two partners. The other $25,000 is included in our federal gas tax contribution. Okay. The capital fee for Wedgeport wastewater pilot project, that's if we get to construction. That would come from the residents. So that's if we get to construction on that project this year. We're estimating, you know, so many construction at a certain cost per. Again, the other side of that is showing in the federal gas tax revenue. And interest income for the gas tax monies, there's interest being earned on that money. And so to look at the expenses, so what we're planning on doing is spending $12,000 on the Tusket wastewater. That is a continuation of last year. So we had budgeted 25, we spent 14. The remaining 12 will come in this year. The 75,000 for resurfacing, it's called track and field resurfacing, but in effect, that won't buy you much. That will set up the project for construction. That'll be planning. That might be some improvements on the location. That is certainly not a new track and field facility, as you know, at 75,000. So most of that, if it happened it would happen next year. It wouldn't happen this year for sure. The wind energy initiative, 152,914. That's essentially the difference between what we figure our cost is going to be, which is about $390,000. We figure our cost is going to be, minus what we already paid, which is the 237,086. The difference is showing as an expense this year. And again, 100% of that is paid for by federal gas tax. And then we have a 15,000 school street repair. The design and installation of the Wedgeport wastewater project at 185. I'm not sure we'll get that high, but that's what we're showing now. And then we have the pre-design cost at 30, which half of that will be paid for by the PCAP, which you remember there's 15 showing as revenue. So that brings us to a break even, but it shows we're spending about $215,000 in our regular capital, and we're spending $469 or $470 in our gas tax capital. And this little nugget at the end is showing what our opening tax opening balance would be and what it's closing. So if everything went as we predicted, we'd have $905,000 in the bank account at the end of next year for gas tax only. 905.
Okay.
So we started at 928 and we'd be at 905.
Yeah.
So essentially we're spending what we're going to get next year.
Yeah.
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 And there's a couple of notes at the end that say that we will be applying for PCAP funding for the Wedgeport planning component. We'll be applying for Building Canada funding for the Wedgeport wastewater project. So obviously if we get funding for BCF, we're not going to use our gas tax, we're going to use the BCF funds. So where it's looking like now is the BCF funding, we don't know when that will come out, but the two projects that could qualify for that include, of our projects, include the Wedgeport wastewater and the track and field. Both of them are eligible projects.
Bill Canada, the Bill Canada Fund,
Yeah,
they've expanded this year, haven't they?
that's correct. They expanded
Building.
BCF to recreation, and so that's new this year. So the gas tax could have paid for the track and field. It can, possibly, but the BCF up until the changes, the recreation facility would not have qualified.
Yeah.
But it does now.
Yeah.
So I imagine we'll, obviously our first priority is the Wedgeport wastewater. That would be our number one. But don't be surprised if I come back and say, can we submit 2 applications? And let them decide which one they want to support, and then we would support the other one with gas tax funds. That makes any sense.
What are the chances you get 2 projects on that? Never, okay.
I don't think there are way too many projects.
Right.
I get you.
Yeah. We'd be fortunate to get one, to be frank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for the capital reserve. I know this one's a little bit more complex. I can assure you that the projects that we have in expenses here, what I do is when I do this budget is I look at your capital investment plan. I look at your 5-year plan. And so is it included in the 5-year plan, and is it going to happen in the next 12 months? So that's how this budget gets populated, because you decide on your 5-year plan. And depending on whether we can do it in the next 12 months, it lands here. So that's the
Capital
last of it. Unless there are any questions.
Motion to accept the capital reserve.
to approve, or what is it?
Approve.
Approve, right?
Approve.
Yeah, as amended, if you wouldn't mind.
With the tourism banner initiative.
Yeah.
Second,
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now next item on the agenda is the tax rates, right? Residential and commercial tax rates. We didn't have any more, district community grants that come in since last week. Okay.
No.
So the proposed rate is the same as last year, same as the last 10 years about, with both rates, right? Yeah.
I'd like to move that council establish a residential rate at $1.07 per hundred assessment and a commercial tax rate at $2.25 per hundred of assessment for the fiscal year 2016, 2017.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
That's ditto.
You know,
That's it.
That's it?
So what we'll do, what staff will do is compile, make the changes, there's only one change. Make the changes, and at the end of the day, we'll have a report that will be online for residents to look at. It'll be, and you will have it like in a binded format.
okay.
It'll look, we haven't decided whether we're gonna include it as an annual report or whether it's just gonna be a standalone for budget and budget highlights, but you'll have that as a package now that we've approved it.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Okay.
Will we adjourn?
That's it.
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned, that's it.